Well, thank you to Kevin, and thank you to the entire MicroStrategy team. I've had a great last couple of days. It's been a pleasure to be here, and it's really exciting to wander around and take a look at everything that is going on. AWS is 8 years young as of a couple of months ago, and it's been a fascinating 8 years. The change that we have seen in the industry as we've talked with customers about the cloud, in the course of 8 years, we went from not knowing what the cloud was to now whenever I walk into a customer, whether they're a startup or an enterprise, the question is not, should I use the cloud, but it's more when and what workloads are we going to go start out with. For a change that's as fundamental as working in the cloud, that's a remarkable change in a short period of time. And so one of the things I thought I would do this morning is step back and take a look at it and take the opportunity to reflect a little bit and understand what's going on and what is driving this. And so as a representative example, I wanted to take a customer that we know quite well, which is Amazon.com itself, the retail side of our business. So if you look at Amazon.com, this is a graph of our US traffic, the way it looked a couple of years ago. And as you can see, similar to many businesses, we have a high kind of cyclical pattern in our traffic. People tend to shop during the day, and then it falls off around midnight or middle of the night. And so it creates an interesting challenge for our IT staff, or created an interesting challenge for them, because their job was to buy enough capacity and run enough capacity so that we never ran out of capacity and that we had enough buffer to deal with the fact that our business is still growing very quickly and very unpredictably. So we needed to make sure that we never ran out of capacity. But it's expensive. This is a massive fleet for us. And so even with a lot of effort put into it, at our best of times, we usually got about 61% utilization, which means that 39% of our resources were effectively going to waste. The challenge got even more interesting when we started looking at what our business looks like in November. So in the United States, the biggest shopping days are at the end of November, right as the consumers are going into the winter holidays. And the difference between our steady state usage and our peak usage could be an order of magnitude. And so you can see the usage graphs up here, and you can see the blue line, which again represents the capacity that we had to buy. And we were faced with the fact that our utilization further fell, and we were only getting about 24% of actual value out of these resources with a significant amount of waste. And more importantly, these are big numbers that we're talking about. We had to put, and the costs of being wrong were pretty considerable. If you overbuy in terms of your capacity, it's a mistake of tens of millions of dollars. If you're underbuy, you're putting your business and your customers at risk. Nobody wants Amazon to shut down right before the holidays. And so we put a lot of our best and our brightest thinking through these problems. Economists trying to forecast the state of the economy to figure out what our likely growth was going to be. A large number of our IT staff not only building forecasting models and purchasing models, but also trying to manage each of our businesses or our product teams as they were iterating and shipping new features which may change our capacity consumptions. It's hard to do that across thousands or tens of thousands of engineers. Now, a couple of years ago, we finished our migration of our web fleet from our historic architecture to AWS, and our graph suddenly started looking like this. Our capacity exactly matched the demand. So the blue line is just a little bit ahead of our actual consumption, and using the cloud, we can dynamically scale resources up or down, increasing more in real time as we start seeing more traffic, say an interesting news article, and then giving them back to AWS, to the overall pool, when Amazon.com, the retailer, no longer needed them. So two things should be obvious from the slide. The first is, that's a lot of money saved. But the second is, even for steady state workloads where you don't get that kind of variability, the bigger and kind of more profound change for us is all of a sudden Amazon's engineering teams, the retail engineering teams, didn't have to think about managing capacity. They didn't have to buy hardware. They didn't have to do forecasting. They didn't understand racking and stacking and powering and configuring hardware and dealing with upgrades. All of that commodity IT work was handled by our AWS business, and they are fully able to go focus on building great new features for the retail experience. And when you think of like how many people we were putting in the process to try to manage our growth and forecast our growth, that savings in human capital and that increased agility is a huge win for us. So, which brings me, generally speaking, to the cloud. What we've seen over the last 8 years is the ability to remove many of the constraints, to free up resources inside our businesses and our customers' businesses and our partners' businesses to focus on truly differentiated work, features that drive value to your business and drive value to your customers, and stop doing the undifferentiated heavy lifting that is the core of IT. And in doing that, the experience for developers now is it's a self-service experience. If you want to spin up a server or 100 servers or 1,000 servers, an engineer or a development team can go to the AWS website, spin it up, and in a matter of minutes, you will have that much capacity. These are things that many of our customers told us would take up to 25 weeks to provision a rack or several racks of servers, happening now in a minute or two. So along the way, over the last 8 years, we've built a very broad and very deep platform. So I won't go too deeply into this eye chart, but at the bottom, you've got the basic infrastructure as a service. We've got servers, a CPU, disk, network, all of this available on demand, all of this accessible to customers exactly as I mentioned before with a click of a button. And then above that, we've started to layer on, or have been layering on over the last couple of years, a robust set of data services, whether it's relational databases, NoSQL databases. We have a streaming real-time data service called Kinesis. We have a data warehouse that is called Redshift that Kevin just mentioned a minute ago. All of these are kind of being added in and are being driven by customer requests to continue building out more data sources. Application services for developers who need to do work and we want to take away, again, some of the heavy lifting for building cloud applications. And then towards the top, you've got a rich ecosystem of partners and also training and support, all of the things for large accounts, the human services that we need to provide. And one thing I want to call out in particular is the middle layer of the management and the administration. For AWS, our single most important job is security. Nothing else is even close. And so part of our job with AWS is to understand the data security requirements and regulations in every country that we operate and make sure that we're providing the environment and the information to our customers so that they can stay in compliance with their particular geographic region. And we have large amount of automated tooling that provide audit trails on how data is accessed, who is accessing it, where it resides, and we have a bunch of operational rules and restrictions. We never look at our customers' data. We never move data. The customer's complete control over where their data is and where it resides. And we work closely with our customers to make sure that they stay in compliance with both their internal regulations and the regulations of whatever country they operate in. So in addition to this stack of services we've gotten, the breadth of our platform, we also have wide global reach, the widest of any cloud provider. So we're available in multiple regions in North America, we're in South America, we're in the EU, multiple regions in Asia Pacific. We just launched a China region as well, and we're continuing to aggressively add these capabilities. One of the hardest things for our customers is to understand what it means to go stand up a data center in a foreign country and, again, operate it with a level of security and efficiency. We believe if we do that for our customers and make it as easy to launch a new business in Japan as it is to launch in Brazil or in Ireland, we're doing our customers a good service. So over the last 8 years, we've certainly gotten our share of startups. They were some of the early adopters of the cloud 8 years ago, and we remain very flattered and proud of all the startups and the innovative companies that are working on us. But I think, like everyone else inside the last several years, we're also seeing huge growth in the enterprise and the Fortune 500. In fact, that's one of the dominant drivers of our business today. And so we've got many of the multinationals around the world using AWS, some of them going all in to the point where they're deprecating their own data centers, others using us for particular workloads or running workloads that are on-premise that are being also supported and extended in the cloud. We have a rich set of system integrators. We've been in this the longest of any player, and so if for customers that want consulting help or app development services, we have a good set of partners there. And also, we've got the broadest ecosystem as well. So all of the named ISVs are up there and are people that we actively work with. And one of the ways that we work with them is in the AWS marketplace. So something interesting happened a couple of years ago for us. The marketplace is now just over 2 years old. We thought it was kind of ironic that now that people are used to being able to provision a server or 100 servers in a matter of minutes, it still might take weeks or months to procure the software that runs on top of it. The irony of that is the server is the hard stuff. That's actual physical goods that you have to rack and stack and build and move around. Software is just bits. And so we had this notion that we wanted to make any piece of software, enterprise, business-focused, developer-focused, as easy to buy and get started using as it is to start reading a Kindle book. One click. And so with the AWS Marketplace, we have many of those ISVs I mentioned are inside the AWS Marketplace, and our notion is this is another way we want to take out the friction of building IT and let the IT staff inside our partners and our customers' company focus on doing differentiated work instead of process. And people have said nice things about us. It's been a good 8 years. We're in the early days. There's a lot of work left to be done. There's way more undone yet than done, but we're off to a good start. Analysts have said nice things about us, and more importantly, we get a steady stream of feedback from customers. And what I wanted to do is spend a little bit of time to drill into what is that feedback from customers, and why are we so excited to be working with MicroStrategy on that front. So there are several reasons that come up consistently when we ask customers, why are you thinking about the cloud? Why have you embraced the cloud as deeply as you have? One of them is just the cost savings. It was probably clear in the graphs I showed about Amazon.com a couple minutes ago. Another one is the idea of managed services. The fact that you don't have to deal with upgrades, you don't have to run these services. When we create new features, they automatically roll out to you. Everything is backwards compatible. You just don't have to deal with the heavy lifting. That's another common one. A third one is the notion of being able to move CapEx and fixed expense to operating expense. So instead of having to forecast and buy hardware that you may amortize over 7 years, you can go and buy something for an hour or for a week and dynamically increase it or decrease it depending on the needs of your business. But the single most important reason that we hear from everybody is agility. Now, agility is one of those kind of well-worn, overused words. And so I want to dive in and get very specific about what that means and what MicroStrategy and AWS is doing to address those things. But generally speaking, agility is the notion that companies want to reduce cycle time with their ability to bring new products to market, bring new value to their customers. And they want to democratize this. They don't want there to be 10 people or tens of people in an R&D department whose job is to go think of new things to build. You want to empower every smart, innovative person in your organization and then let them do things quickly and learn from them quickly. So specifically, when we look at agility, we look at 3 things. The first one is removing constraints. If you're creative, if you have a great business idea or a product you want to test, or you've gotten some feedback from customers that is crystal clear on what you want to go build, and it's going to take you 25 weeks to go get the hardware deployed so that you can run it, you're no more agile than that longest pole in your development and innovation cycle. So for us, going in and finding a way to take these constraints that are physical barriers to the business and reduce them is key. One thing I thought interesting, when we started the business, every once in a while we'd run into a company that was very proud of its procurement. Last year, we managed to reduce our procurement time by 50%, from 16 weeks to 8 weeks. We can now get a new order of software in the data center available for our businesses in 8 weeks. Now, that sounds pretty good. There's very few metrics that if I couldn't get a 50% improvement in a year, I wouldn't be excited about. But it still doesn't fundamentally alter the problem of 8 weeks is still too long. When you can go from weeks to minutes, now all of a sudden access to hardware and infrastructure is not your constraint. You're free to iterate on your business as quickly as you can marshal the resources and come up with the good ideas. And again, the same thing is true with the software, with the AWS Marketplace. If we can take a lot of the negotiation and the forecasting that has to go in terms of how many licenses that you want to manage, if we can take that out of the equation, we're now letting companies, or we're doing as much as we can, we're trying to do our part to let companies and let our customers innovate more faster. So the first one is remove constraints. And with MicroStrategy, the partnership, the first announcement that came out, I guess, yesterday with Mike Saylor is the addition of MicroStrategy to the AWS Marketplace. So with a single button click, you can not only spin up MicroStrategy, but also spin up all the underlying resources you need, the hardware, the network. MicroStrategy products are pre-configured, optimized for the cloud, and within a minute or two, it's available for you or your business teams or your analysts to start working. No muss, no fuss. It's available by the hour, so you can spin it up, and then when you don't need it anymore, or if your needs change, you can either add more or reduce less. There's also the ability to have annual for steady-state workloads where you know there's going to be an ongoing need. You can do it annual, and there's a further discount on top of that. The second aspect of driving agility is reduce risk. Reducing constraints goes from being exciting to scary when you're saying, oh my gosh, I've just made it possible for not just 10 people, but hundreds or thousands of people to make a $10 million mistake. That's terrifying. However, if you can take the costs of learning and the inevitable mistakes that you make and make it $1, an hour of server usage, or an hour of MicroStrategy usage, and know that you don't have to be right about the business. You don't have to be able to figure out the long-term potential of the business. All you have to do is focus right here, right now, on what your customers are telling you, what the opportunity is, and then learn as you go along. All of a sudden, removal of constraints goes from being something scary to something being really powerful. And the interesting thing about driving down risk is it drives down process. I always get a little bit defensive for IT staff when people talk about IT being a constraint on the business and getting in the way. It's true from a business perspective. IT can be a constraint, but they also have a controllership responsibility. Their job, or part of their job, is to keep the company from making a $10 million or $1 million mistake. This is valuable resource. The shareholders have a stake in it. Other business units who could also use that resource have a stake in it. And so just like with Amazon.com, in places where there's high risk, you build high process. And the bigger the risk, the more people, the more senior people, the more controls you put into trying to make sure the wrong thing doesn't happen. Unfortunately, that process is directly in opposition to agility. It's incredibly demotivating and frustrating for someone with a great idea to have to wait 25 weeks or jump through a lot of bureaucratic red tape or a lot of process. So by reducing the risk, that's the second piece of increasing agility. And so specifically with MicroStrategies, I was extremely excited to be a part of and to listen to Mike Saylor announce yesterday the notion of a free trial, where even if hourly is still too risky, your ability to get up and running with the infrastructure, with consulting help from MicroStrategy, and have a month of usage free right there, up and ready in a matter of minutes, is very compelling. The third piece of this is once you've removed the constraints and once you remove the risks, now you have got not tens, but thousands or tens of thousands of people actively able to innovate. You have tapped into much of the creative spirit and much of the passion that people in enterprises just as much as startups want to apply to solving business problems. Now the responsibility is, let's make them be right more often. A key part of democratizing innovation is democratizing data. And this is not news to you or you wouldn't be here. This is at the core, I think, of MicroStrategy's message, and we fundamentally believe this is true. Our internal saying is that we measure and monitor obsessively, and we learn quickly. We know we're only going to be partially right all the time. In fact, internally, part of our culture is if you don't fail at least a third of your goals, you're probably not risking enough and iterating or leaning forward enough. And so we know we're only going to be partially right, or there's parts of the market that is just unknowable that we will not discover until we're in the market and understanding it. And so a key part of that is allowing all these people who now have the power to go do the innovation to go make the right decisions. And so one of the things I'm, again, very happy and appreciative with MicroStrategy is the fact that now on the marketplace, they have an offering for any size of company. Whether you're a startup or a division with 25 seats of MicroStrategy's product, or you're looking for thousands of seats, there is an offering for you in the marketplace, and it's as simple, and they're all equally simple. You can click a button, start working, use more when you need to, reduce it when you also need to. So a final comment on MicroStrategy. Lots of software companies like to talk about how they're innovating. So the whole notion of removing constraints or trying to innovate yourself into agility is not news. But I'll tell you, a lot of old guard software companies are much less willing to accept risk and share risk with their customers. They're very focused on upfront contracts, long-term license forecasting, and it's one of the reasons for many customers buying software can be a very painful and risky process. One of the things that I give a great deal of kudos to MicroStrategy is their willingness to use their business model to unlock agility on behalf of their customers, doing things like free trial, doing things like hourly pricing. All of this reflects, I think, a very forward-looking view into where the market is adopting and increasingly what customers and businesses are going to expect from their software partners. From our perspective, it's very consistent with our culture at AWS. We got used to a long time ago trying to take a long-term view, figure that if we made our customers more agile, even if it meant that we were sharing risk with them and only getting paid as they get paid, or as they make money, that we would in the long term benefit because they're going to be able to come up with more ideas, their businesses are going to grow faster, and we will have earned the right to come back and earn more of their business. And I applaud MicroStrategy. It's one of the reasons I enjoy working with them as a partner so much, is that they have the same type of DNA. So I want to leave with a final thought. In my career, I have never seen a sea change and as much disruptive innovation as I have witnessed over the last 8 years. The thing that has come the closest was in the very early days of the internet and watching the internet be built out and browsers and how kind of fundamentally that changed how businesses worked. The cloud and all of the data analytics and the explosion of big data that goes along with it is truly fascinating. And it's one of the reasons that for AWS and MicroStrategy, building the platform and the tools to help enable our customers and our partners to take advantage of it is a great job. But when the books of history are closed, and when the verdict is written, they're not going to be writing about us. They're going to be writing about you. The end story is going to depend on what did you do in terms of great new businesses or product that you built or ways that you transformed the relationship between IT and business inside your company. How you got more agile, how you got disruptive, how you delivered more value to your customers. So I wanted to encourage you to take a moment and reflect on that. It's probably not news to you, again, because you wouldn't be here. You are in the vanguard of your companies. You are the people who are thinking about data analytics and the cloud. You are the ones who will go back to your company and affect change. God, that's awesome. Go do great things. Go do great things. Go change your companies. And if you have a moment, drop me a line about it, even if you're not using AWS, although we certainly hope you will. For us who are working in the business, the ultimate currency is your success. Your success maps to our success, and I love hearing about those stories. Enjoy the rest of your week. Thanks for taking the time.